Welcome back, listeners, to a new episode of the New Standard. And as always, I have my partner in crime to my left, Neil Coulong. What's up, Neil?
Lance, I'm good. I'm here still in the frozen north, surviving winter as best you can. Pre Super Bowl weekend, always a good time. Oh yeah, and that whole Valentine's Day thing that I'm sure we have to do something about, but not before the Super Bowl for the most part. We're excited for that, even if the hated Cincinnati Bengals are representing the AFC. All stuff we're
Yeah,
going to get into, right?
yeah. I'm not one of those fans that are like, yeah, well, at least it's the AFC North representing in the Super Bowl. They're the Bungles forever,
I hate,
and I'm
yeah,
never,
I
I'm
don't like
never
the rest of the
happy.
division. Why would I want them to be represented as a
Exactly,
whole? There's only
exactly. Yeah,
one team that
exactly.
represents that division, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, exactly. So, with that being said, before we jump into the show and the show notes, want to welcome everybody that's joining us on the live chat. Want to welcome everybody that listens to the podcast. And there are a variety of ways to do that. You can listen to the podcast, of course, going to your favorite podcast reader or feeder and do a search for the New Standard and Neil Coulong or Lance Williams, or you can join us on YouTube Live. And a little bit of show business. We are changing when we are going to do the live YouTube show. We are going to do it on Saturday mornings at this time. So you can relax, get your coffee, and join Neil and myself. We are a little bit older, so we wanted to shift to the weekends because the weeks are very hectic and very busy. So that's the show note, little show business. We have a scheduling change. But before we hop into the show, Neil, what's your favorite Super Bowl snack? And do you have a favorite Super Bowl commercial?
Um, Super Bowl snack. To be honest with you, I've had this conversation recently. I'm kind of a dip fan, some type of
Ha
cheese
ha.
based dip. On top of that, I am a huge Dorito slut. I'll eat Doritos pretty much 24/7 if I have the opportunity to do that. Um, I fancy myself something of a junk food gourmet as well. Give me a crock
Chewy
pot
candy? Chewy
hunk of
candy?
cheese. I not as much. I'm definitely more of a savory over sweet sort of guy. But
Okay.
baked desserts, absolutely. Candy in and of itself, not a whole lot. Give me tortilla chips and some type of cheese dip and buffalo wings. I would go for that all day.
For me, when it comes to Super Bowl snacks, you probably hit it for me. I like wings. I can probably eat wings every day of the year. And of course, being from Pittsburgh, I like my wings dry. I just like them fried hard. And I'll take the wing and dip it in whatever sauce that I
Oh
want.
yeah, you know it.
I used to get wings from a place called Nat's in the strip. If you got any old school Pittsburgh guys listen to the show, they know Nats. Nats was a nice little watering hole in the strip where you could get Miller High Life for like $1.50, and you can get about 10 wings for about $7 and just enjoy yourself all day. In terms of Super Bowl commercial, I can't think of any that jump out. I mean, I'm sure we'll think of Super
There's
Bowl
a bunch. I
commercials.
mean,
There's a
the first
bunch.
one that would come to me, Bud Bowl. Bud Bowl was a staple
Okay.
of my youth, my generation. We really got into the Bud Bowl, the running game within the game. Definitely a massive marketing success, and there are always really good commercials, but they're commercials. You don't really remember them beyond that particular moment. And I know there's always a lot that I really enjoy. I am absolutely not somebody who watches them intently. They just happen to be on. I'm there for the game. I like the game. Um, I'll enjoy it. I don't make a big thing of it, but yeah, they're always, they put a lot of money into it. They're very clever. That part of it is enjoyable. I see why people get into it. It's not just me though.
Now I will full disclosure on a pet peeve I have with dips. I don't like I do like cream-based dips, but I don't like cream-based dips with a lot of people at parties because of dirty phalanges. E coli. I don't like E. coli.
Are people
Uh,
you're going to parties with dipping their fingers in the dip? I mean, it's meant to have like a chip or
man,
bread or something.
no, no, here it is. It's like
The
people double
heathens you're
dip.
hanging out with.
Yeah, and people double dip. People start drinking drinks. They get their fingers in it. people just had they fumble on the dip. So, I
Like,
like
well,
you know,
I just spoon up some in a bowl. If I'm making it, you put paper bowls alongside it. You got a nice dipping spoon. They put some into the bowl. You don't have double dip then if you want. You don't do it into the main trough.
well, let's jump into the show
What the
because
hell's wrong with you people?
Neil just proved that he's not really from Pittsburgh because that's civilized. That's the civilized way to do it. So I'm just disappointed now because
Your
Neil
people
just
are
proved
elbow deep into the dip.
he's not exactly. He's not from Pittsburgh because he said dip into a side bowl. Like, okay. Anyway, but
Sorry.
the big news of the week in the Steelers lore or in Steelers land, and we'll talk about both, is one, the hiring of Teryl Austin. I think we all knew that that was going to happen. It just took a little bit of time for whatever reason. And TJ Watt winning Defensive Player of the Year. I think similar to Teryl Austin being hired, I think everybody knew that TJ Watt was going to win Defensive Player of the Year once he tied the sack record. Give me your thoughts on the Austin hire. And from this perspective, what do you think the role of the defensive coordinator is in Pittsburgh? Because I think we all acknowledge, because it came out a couple of weeks ago, that Tomlin has heavy fingerprints on this defense. He's the primary defensive play caller, as it's being alleged. So what's the role of the DC for the Steelers when you have a head coach that is so ingrained in the process?
Yeah, let's just first when we get into this, we're going to operate under the assumption that Mike Tomlin is just our vernacular here, Lance. Mike Tomlin is calling most of the defensive plays. Okay. Let's just accept that that's probably what's going on. They're going to be very cagey about it. They're going to dance around the issue. Let's just say that Mike Tomlin is the one calling it. Um, it in doing that, we also need to point out that this is not rare in the NFL in any way, shape, or form. I would estimate half of coordinators in the game are not calling plays. What that's really emphasizing, and this isn't something that seems to be common knowledge, a coordinator's job is not solely to call plays. Coordinator's job is putting the entire side of the ball together under organization, under structure, mapping that structure out, which is heavily based in terminology, in communication. That's really what a coordinator is doing. When you have a situation where really what the Steelers have had since Cowher, their system, their structure of defense is being generally put together by the same people year in and year out. Whatever changes that they would make are going to be probably stuff that they want to do directionally, and they're not in a situation where they're looking to overhaul their personnel, their alignment. All these things they're already doing what they're doing. It's tough. Since TJ Watt's name came up, it's tough to make him better. He's going to work to get better. They're going to scheme him up to be better than he was, but you got a pretty good sense of what you're going to get out of TJ Watt at its high end right now. Now, to be fair, he's gotten votes for defensive player of the year the last 3 years, which oddly enough puts him in the same stratosphere as Aaron Donald, the guy that he beat out this year, and his brother, JJ Watt. Khalil Mack might have done that. Not many guys have done it. The point is, your coordinator is aware of who TJ Watt is, and he understands he's getting the money to receive the accolades that he's getting. So you're talking about the continuity from one year to the next. Mike Tomlin might be the guy calling plays. Nobody draws all that up by themselves. Somebody is in charge of taking the vision that the head coach has, not just Mike Tomlin. This goes anywhere. It doesn't matter if an offensive-minded coach, Nathaniel Hackett, just hired by the Broncos, he's worked on the offensive side of the ball. He's still responsible for the defense. They're going to hire a defensive coordinator who can call, draw up, do whatever on defense the way Hackett wants it to be done. So new coach, new coordinator in Denver, they're overhauling what they're doing. Excuse me. that is still under the responsibility of Hackett, not the defensive coordinator reporting straight to the general manager. It doesn't work that way. Tomlin oversees both sides of the ball. He calls plays in our scenario, what we're going to agree upon. He's calling the plays on defense. He's still overseeing all of it. So Austin and Canada both report to Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin is overseeing how they are drawing things up based on what Tomlin ultimately wants to do versus the opponent. Austin is in an advantageous position in that he is familiar with what they do. He's familiar with the personnel. So whatever tweaks they have is not going to be Teryl Austin sitting in a room by himself for 2 weeks while Mike Tomlin's on vacation, and they come back to run, I don't know, a 5-2 stack defense. They don't. It's not done like that. They're coming up with personnel groupings, sub packages more than anything else. I would imagine part of Austin's appeal back when he was hired in 2018 was his ideas of what to do with a secondary that was going to have to expand. They were going to need more defensive backs on the field. They were going to need more versatility from their safeties. They brought in somebody with good ideas and good experience with that, which, in my opinion, Austin's done a great job over the last couple of years, and it made perfect sense why he was going to be their defensive coordinator. I think we knew that was going to happen. So he is going to customize a defense based on the personnel that they have, weigh in on pending free agents, weigh in on league free agents, weigh in on draft candidates. They scout all of these things. They look at all these things, take their notes, recommend what they think should happen to their particular grouping, probably work with I don't think they're going to make a change with their linebackers coach. I forget the outside linebackers' names. It's Perryman and Denzel Perryman, I think, is the outside linebackers coach. Jerry Olsofsky is still in his job, as far as I know. With the inside linebackers, it sounds like they'll remain. So Austin's going to go over with them what he sees from these groups based on what Tomlin kind of wants to do. They're all going to contribute to it. Austin's the guy that's putting all of that together. And if Mike Tomlin is the one calling plays, that's fine. But the play calling job means nothing until September. So they've got a lot of work they need to do on a unit that was great at times and terrible at times. A lot of things that they need to do, and it's really going to focus on personnel right away. So Austin is, like the other defensive assistants, going to weigh in on that side of the ball, players that they want to keep, players that they should get rid of, players that they want to add, players or positions they should address in the draft, all that stuff. It's done through film work. It's done through vision and organization of how they want to proceed defensively in the future.
Yeah, you were right. Denzel Martin is the assistant outside linebackers coach. Secondary coach is Grady Brown. Defensive line coach is Carl Dunbar, and Jerry O is the inside linebackers coach. I was reading an article in reference to Mike Tomlin calling plays on The Athletic by Hall of Famer. I think he's a Hall of Famer, Ed Bouchette, or a Hall of Fame voter, or he might be a Hall of Famer. I'm not sure.
He's both.
He's both. Okay. And so, one thing he said was, his preference would be to delineate play calling to the defensive coordinator. Let me ask you, from your experience in being around the Steelers and other organizations, how much does calling plays on game day interfere with or make more difficult the other stuff that the head coach has to do?
That, I feel, in sort of a catch-22 way, that depends on how good and how well organized your head coach is. Okay. Doing a good job of that includes having good assistants who are well prepared and are able to execute on their own the things that they need to do to be ready to handle all of that. I would imagine, I haven't read Ed's article. Ed's a great guy. I really appreciate the help that Ed's given me in my career, not to knock him in any way, but my guess is going to be what he's going to say is Tomlin loses a lot of challenges. He doesn't challenge the right things. He mismanages the clock. It's simple to say he has so much focus on calling plays defensively, he can't do those other things. It's not as simple as that. Clock management, we can get into that in another show. the idea is Tomlin's focus is on the game that's unfolding to him. So the idea that Tomlin's calling plays means he's pretty well dialed in to what's going on the field. He should be more aware of it, in fact, if he has to go to that level of detail and understanding of what's appearing in front of him. If there is something else that he is, pulled into, which I'm making more out of this than it really is, you have a defensive coordinator, you have assistant coaches. Those things are done at that level. I've seen that. I'll share this story. I worked on a sideline of a Vikings game, one of the last ones that I had done. Sean Payton was the Saints coach, and this wasn't a regular season game, but Sean Payton was new, and he took certain liberties to address the failure of a player on the field. And I was holding his mic cord, and I was close enough to him. He was inventing profanity. It was remarkable. He dealt with profanity the way that some artists deal in clay or oils. He really knew how to express his frustration without raising his voice to a ridiculous level. Yeah, exactly. That's where I pulled that line
on a Christmas story. Yes.
He the point of this was that this backup fullback got I think he got like a holding penalty or something to that regard. And Peyton first addressed the player generally in kind of a way, making sure everyone around him knew that he said it. And then he went into his headset, and you adjust the mic. You can kind of tell when he was talking to somebody on the headset or not. And I assume he's addressing the position coach. And he said, just very calmly, very straight mannered, that mother effing SOB has gotten 2 penalties in the last 3 games. Pause. I just wanted you to know that. And it very much sarcastic. You need to fix this right now. It wasn't long after that, you saw the position coach come over, and he's tearing a strip into the guy. And the guy's arguing back with him too. It was quite the sight. I had to, continue doing what I was doing, but I wanted to see if they were going to start, throwing punches at each other or something. But it gets pretty heated. And a head coach in those situations knows how to handle chaos. And that's, I think, the best way to describe an NFL sideline. There's a lot that's going on, and it does make sense on the outside of it to say, how can one person manage all this? The main thing that you need to understand is there are dozens of people doing dozens of things at once. One person couldn't control all of it. His job is to delegate that responsibility. At the same time, with football, there is a level of micromanagement that occurs. And it's more or less the head coach giving a general direction, and it's up to the other people to kind of follow suit with what he said. So in other words, put it like this. If it's Mike Tomlin on the sideline, looking at the situation, they've prepared all week, statistically, analytically. They know when they feel they have an advantage in whatever situation. And it's up to the coach usually to make that call. Let's say it's, 2nd and 10, the next Steelers quarterback. I don't want to say that it's Mason yet, just out of denial. Big completion to Deontay Johnson. They're now at the 50 with a minute and a half left. Tomlin at that point would probably tell Canada over the headset, we score, we're going to go for 2, be ready. He'll say something like that. My understanding is most coaches who aren't calling those plays won't be the one to call whatever, but they might say, I want to run off of the tackle. I want something up the middle. I want a QB sneak. They might get to that level and request whatever it is. They may have prepared for exactly that. They might have 3 plays that they are going to go over in those situations. And Mike is saying, we're going to prepare for 3. And based on the situation, I'm going to give you one of them and go with that. It all depends. So that there's not one straight way to do any of it. But what I know is, oftentimes coaches are hired based on their acumen on one side of the ball. And with that, part of their salary is going to be dictated on the idea that they'll call plays. It really depends on the coach. It depends on their staff. So you want to have a staff of veterans, a staff of people that you are prepared you know that you communicate well with, you trust, you know that they can do their job amid all of that chaos. And when you have that, you have more freedom, you have more flexibility to just give out a general command and trust that they're going to take care of the
Right.
legwork on the
Right.
ground level. So it is very circumstantial. I can't say I know enough about what the Steelers are doing or what their sideline is now to say whether he should or should not be doing it. What I do know is that Mike Tomlin's been the head coach of an NFL team for a very long time, and there are guys 20 years his junior without a shred of the experience that he has that call plays. So if they're doing it, I certainly think Tomlin can manage to do it. And I don't think that Tomlin's calling on the defensive side of the ball is what has kind of impacted them. Certainly not this season.
Let's move forward and let's jump into TJ Watt getting Defensive Player of the Year. And let me read off the names of 20 sack guys that he joins. And this is an impressive list here. Most of these guys are in the Hall of Fame. So he joins Michael Strahan, of course, Mark Gastineau, Jared Allen, Justin Houston, Chris Dolman, Reggie White,
Crystal.
Aaron Donald, Lawrence Taylor, and his brother, of course, J.J. Watt. How good of a season was it for TJ? Where does it rank for you in terms of all-time defensive seasons? For me, I guess in the last 10 years, I thought that Aaron Donald's, I believe his 2018 season when he had the 20 and a half sacks
Should have been
for an
MVP.
interior lineman, was probably the best defensive season that I've seen probably in the last 25 years. And I agree with you. I thought
Yep.
he should have been MVP. He was absolutely, absolutely. That's how good he was in 2018. Penn Hills native. Where does this season rank for you in terms of TJ Watt's 22 and a half sack season defensive player of the year? Where does it rank for you in
You know,
terms of maybe all-time great Steelers seasons, defensive seasons, or just where does it rank? Where do you think about that season?
um, for me to put some context into it, I would agree with you. I think Donald in 2018 was the best that I saw. Um, his brother's 20 sack season, JJ's 20 sack season was epic. Um, JJ and Donald, that I one of those two I think is probably the best. Um, the thing with TJ is he didn't get the full 16 games. And I know that we've talked about this and it's always going to be used as kind of an excuse. They had 18 weeks. He didn't play 16 games. He flat out took over a couple games. They weren't all out 4-quarter assaults the way that we've seen, I think, from TJ in the past. But the Seattle game, he was unblockable for 2 series, and that won him the game. It shouldn't have gotten as far as it did. You wish that, maybe he had done more throughout the game to not have to go to overtime against that team. But he won the game for them late. We saw that. His bad games seemed to be ones that he left due to injury or he was injured walking into. So the amazing thing for me with his season is when he was healthy, I don't think he had a bad game. And he was flat out
I would agree.
otherworld in a few of them. So I'd say this, and I'm biased, so I probably have no basis of this, but the best individual defensive player season that I saw was James Harrison in 2008.
Yes, that's what I was
I've
going to
had
say.
conversations with people who suggest, and perhaps fairly so, that Polamalu was better in 2008 than Harrison was. Maybe Harrison wasn't even the defensive player of the year that year. Some of that is the Super Bowl play. Some of it is a hangover effect from the best individual defensive game I ever saw, which was James Harrison in 2007 against the Ravens. TJ Watt over 3 years is, in my opinion, hands down the best this generation of Steelers fans has ever seen. And I think this might, I don't know. He was
Just
outstanding last year too.
just go ahead and say it. He's on.
I
He's in position to be quite possibly the best Steeler defensive player.
I think to get to that
He's on
level,
that trajectory.
to be higher than Mean Joe Green, he's going to have to do more than what he is. But right now, take any of them over 3 years. I don't think any of them can do what Watt has done. Mean Joe won what? One defensive player? Or did he win two? I think he won two.
I'm not sure. I can look it up.
I think it's probably fair to say, and voting was a lot different back then, but I want to call this out again because this is a really big deal. There are not many players in this era, call it the 90s through now. There are not many players who have gotten votes for Defensive Player of the Year in 3 consecutive years. And TJ Watt's going to be playing at age 28 next year. He could very, very easily do that again. He could very easily win it again. At that point, he's at his brother's level. And in my opinion, his brother and Aaron Donald are the 2 best defensive players we've seen since Reggie. You know, that's
last 25.
It's amazing in an era that has seen an explosion of offensive playmakers, of money, of injuries, to do something similar to what JJ Watt or Aaron Donald has done is absolutely remarkable. And TJ is at that level now. And it's weird. You know, you still kind of look at him as, you know, he's the young guy, he's the young buck growing into this defense, but he's a remarkable player. And we saw it in a year that he frankly wasn't 100% for a good chunk of it. We saw him absolutely destroy whatever they threw at him. And you hope to get another 2-3 years of his peak prime before the large amount of snaps that he had early in his career are going to start mounting up for him, the back end of his contract. I think it's a safe bet to say if he can avoid major injury the next 2 years, you're getting a Hall of Fame level player out of that.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree. I mean, he's impacted the game tremendously, and he's just an incredible draft pick. The value that they got out of that pick is just absolutely incredible. And you are correct. Joe Green did win Defensive Player of the Year 2 times in 1972 and 1974. But before we jump into the main topic of the show, and it's a good discussion before we get there. Sorry about that, Steelers Freak. It's taken a little bit of time for us to get into the topics, but you know, everything was Steeler related. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the discussion. And the main topic of the show is going to be the Steelers must improve these offensive numbers in 2022 to be more successful. Any thoughts on the Hall of Fame class? And let me read it out for you. I think I still have it here. Tony Baselli, Leroy Butler, Sam Mills, Richard Seymour, Bryant Young, Cliff Branch, Art McNally, and Dick Vermeil. One thing I'll say is I thought Tony Baselli, along with Ogden, Orlando Pace, and Munoz, probably the best tackle. One of the he's in that group of best tackles that I've seen that I can really remember. And I will say this: I thought Richard Seymour was one of the most versatile defensive linemen that I had seen. And I know Jeff Hardings did not like Richard Seymour because
Nobody
Jeff Hardings
liked Richard Seymour.
Richard used to go to work on the Steelers offensive line. They used to put him at, you know, 1 technique, 3 technique, 5 technique, both sides of the offensive line. I mean, he used to go to work on the Steelers offensive line. Outstanding player out of the SEC. So I'm glad to see Richard Seymour, although he was a hated Patriot, make the Hall of Fame. Any quick comments on that class? Anything stand out?
I'm a big Hall of Fame dork. I'll try to keep it as quick as possible. One biggest takeaway is I'm utterly shocked with a few of these, but I will say I have been on the Baselli bandwagon for a long time. I think it's great. Injuries cut down greatness. We see it all the time. Baselli was an absolute force of nature, and he would have been up there with any of the top guys. Joe Thomas was at least on Baselli's level. Jonathan Ogden, I think, might be the best I ever saw. Walter Jones is absolutely up there. Baselli was right there with those guys, in my opinion. What we've seen from the late as far as safeties go, I think Roy Butler belongs there as much as Polamalu and Ed Reed does. You know, certainly more than John Lynch. Another mistake that John Lynch should not have been in the Hall of Fame before Leroy Butler was. In the end, I'll just cool my jets with that and just say, look, Butler's there. He belongs there. That's good. Seymour, in my opinion, was one of the best defensive players of his era. The fact that he was utterly dominant snap to snap is secondary to the fact that he's one of the most versatile defensive linemen that we saw in an era that didn't prize versatility the way that it does today. Cam Hayward is a modern Richard Seymour, and Cam Hayward, in my opinion now, and believe me, I will dedicate my working career to this. Richard Seymour getting in the Hall of Fame gives Cam Hayward a shot at the Hall of Fame. In my opinion, Cam Hayward belongs in the Hall of Fame. Won't be first ballot. It's going to take a lot of work, but I really, really hope the Steelers get their SHIT together. And if they were able to win one with Hayward on the roster, that would only help. He belongs there, in my opinion. Should have been an all-decade player. We'll get into that another time. Bryant Young is really interesting. Very, very unusual selection to the average fan. But the weird thing with Bryant Young is you ask any player about him, they'll tell you how good he was. I felt,
and being out here in the Bay Area, Bryant Young was lauded in this area for how good he was.
They absolutely,
I mean, he was lauded out here.
His opponents feared him. It's surprising. It's surprising. I was surprised he was a finalist, to be honest with you.
I was surprised Sam Mills got in the
Hall of Fame.
I'm surprised Sam Mills got in.
But Sam Mills, great story. I love the legacy. I love him as a football player. I love him as a competitor. You have any idea how many players you need to let in the Hall of Fame now if you're going to let Sam Mills in? Sam Mills over Patrick Willis is absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Sam Mills over Zach Thomas is absolutely ridiculous. I don't think Zach Thomas even really fully belongs in the Hall of Fame. What about London Fletcher? London Fletcher outproduced Sam Mills in any comparable statistic except for viral sayings. If anything, London Fletcher is not in the Hall of Fame if Sam Mills is, because London Fletcher was the true workman. He went about his way. He didn't draw attention to himself. It's not that he wasn't a leader. He just wasn't the big rah kind of guy that Mills was. And I love Sam Mills. I don't think any football guy doesn't love Sam Mills. Hall of Fame? I don't see it, Lance. I don't see it. Senior inductee, Cliff Branch. Okay.
Yeah, Cliff definitely. I like Cliff. I mean, Cliff's old school Raider guy. Cliff was a great player back then.
I don't. Another story for another day. This is really Cliff Branch is today. This is how I'll hook it, Lance. Cliff Branch is today what Hines Ward might be in 25 years. If Hines Ward's going to get in the Hall of Fame, it's going to be as a senior inductee. It is not going to be.
I agree.
As a vote. And to be honest with you, I would have said the same thing about Sam Mills and Bryant Young. So maybe something happened there. I felt the regular panel of voters would not be able to compare these guys well to a current and widely accepted Hall of Famer. I don't think that we see that. Cliff Branch, senior inductee, fine. I think very comparable in an impact sense to Hines Ward. Not the best of his generation, not even among the best, really, but a very solid producer, a notable player who had something exceptional that players around him didn't do quite as well. He was one of the first deep guys we saw have a lot of success,
baby.
And he was good like that. Okay. The coach inductee, wow, they opened the floodgates for coaches. Dick Vermeil getting the Hall of Fame. Okay.
Let's keep it moving. Okay. Let's keep it moving with that. And by the way,
a lot of coaches are getting in the Hall of Fame now. Start betting heavy on that. A lot of coaches.
I like Dick Vermeil Wines. He has a nice little winery out in Napa. He has a nice little tasting room. Good. That my wife and I enjoy.
Seems like so he
has great Cabernet. But let's jump into the topic of the show, and that's the Steelers must improve these offensive numbers in 2022. And we're going to just go through a list of them. And as I go through them, Neil, write down what you think are the most important numbers that they need to improve on. And what I like to do, listeners, is when we get to the playoffs and you get to the Super Bowl, I like to tally up an offensive comparison sheet to the playoff teams. And so the Steelers are one of those teams this year. And so I like to take a look at, just a comparison across the board to see how the Steelers compare in certain numbers. I do it typically on both sides of the ball on defense as well, but I try to concentrate on the offensive side of the ball because, shoot me, I'm getting ready to say it. Offense wins championships, but balanced teams win championships as well. But offense wins championships. You got to be able to score the football. I mean, you got to be able to score and score at a decent clip. So let's run through some of these stats. I'm going to start with third down conversion rate. When you look at the playoff teams, they rank 1 through 14 respectively. No, excuse me. When you look at the playoff teams, the lowest ranking team on third down conversions was the Raiders at 22. Um, the Steelers ranked at 17. But let me just shift reels. Let me do it this way. Here are some of the stats that I looked at: third down percentage, red zone percentage, QB ranking, obviously points per game, yards per point, yards per play, adjusted sack rate, points per play, yards per attempt, and big passing plays and passing plays of 20 yards or more. So let me give you where the Steelers rank in each of those. In terms of third down conversions, the Steelers ranked 17 overall in the NFL. Amongst playoff teams, they ranked 13th. In terms of red zone percentage, they ranked 22nd overall in the NFL. Amongst playoff teams, they ranked 13th. In terms of quarterback rating, Ben's quarterback rating was 87.2, which was 22nd in the NFL. It was 13th ranked amongst playoff quarterbacks. Points per game, the Steelers were 20.2 for the year. The NFL rank was 21st. The rank in the playoff teams, amongst playoff teams, was 14th. So they were the lowest scoring team, and their quarterback had the second lowest quarterback rating. Let's get back to those. In terms of yards per point, it took the Steelers they had to gain 15.4 yards to get a point, which ranked 19th in the NFL, 13th amongst playoff teams. Yards per play, the Steelers were 28th in the NFL, only averaging 4.8, which was last amongst playoff teams. I'm going to skip past adjusted sack rate. Points per play, they averaged 0.30 points per play, which was 25th in the National Football League. It was 14th amongst playoff teams. And that coincides with the fact that they scored only 20 points per game this year. In terms of yards per attempt, the Steelers averaged 6 yards per attempt, which was ranked 30th in the National Football League, 14th amongst playoff teams. In terms of passing pace of 20 yards or more, they have 41 on the year, which was 27th in the National Football League. They ranked 13th overall amongst playoff teams. When you average all those metrics together, the Steelers' average was 22nd, and their playoff average amongst all those numbers was 13. So overwhelmingly, the Steelers were the worst offensive team in the playoffs. So looking at these numbers, third down percentage, red zone percentage, quarterback rating, points per game, yards per point, yards per play, adjusted sack rate, points per play, yards per attempt, and passing plays of 20 yards or more, rank your top three most important.
For me, what it really comes down to is your ability to make explosive plays down the field. If we're defining that as 20 plus yards, that's number one for me. And it clearly shows the fact, this is what I had looked up. As far as the passing game goes, 42 out of 745, 6%, which was 30th in the league. It seems like 42 over 18 games is more of an accident than anything else. Rushing, not a whole lot different, just a little bit more common because they weren't able to run as much. 42 explosive plays out of 430. That's 10%. That was 25th in the league. So a little step up there. Put all of it together. There was 6% of all of their plays were of the explosive variety, which typically is defined as 10 yards or more rushing and 20 yards or more passing. There were only two teams in the NFL that were worse than them overall. That was the Houston Texans and the New York Giants. Now, if being at or around the same level as the Texans or the Giants seems like a good thing to you, I'm not sure what you're watching. But to me, it's as clear as day. They can't make plays down the field. If you're not able to do that, you are going to play 1984 style football, which pre-Bill Walsh. That's kind of, I guess, the pinnacle of the rise of Bill Walsh. But call it 1980 then. If you have to run 30 times a game at 3.4 yards pop in order to control and win by a field goal, okay. But nowadays, the other side of the ball, you almost have to expect them to score 27 plus. You're not doing that if you aren't moving the ball quickly and efficiently down the field. The Steelers absolutely cannot do that for a variety of reasons, things that we have highlighted throughout the course of the year. They don't have dudes, okay? They just don't. I know that we love Juju. We love the Steelers receivers, and they're all really good, and we think this is the coordinator's fault. These guys are not difference makers. They're just not. I really, like, another piece of news last we didn't get into, Steelers moved on from their wide receivers coach. I don't think that's a coincidence either. I think the fact that Chase Claypool was worse his second year than he was in his first is problematic. He's your playmaker, and he didn't make any plays. Deontay Johnson is a good possession receiver. He's a great technical receiver. I have a lot of that as a purist. I know the wide receiver position probably better than I know others. And what you see from Deontay Johnson is a highly skilled player, but he's not breaking away from guys deep down the field. He's not going to make big plays unless he's set up to do that. And to some degree, he probably shouldn't be. He's he's a chain stretching kind of guy. You can get him the ball a lot, you're going to have production, but he's not a big time playmaker. They need a big time playmaking receiver. They need more out of their tight ends as a whole. Hopefully they get to a point where they're not running screen passes with Zach Gentry anymore for 3-yard gains. Everything that the Steelers did was to promote the idea that they are a ball control offense because they couldn't make plays down the field. They knew that they couldn't. They had to plan around that. I guarantee you priority number one for them this offseason is to find guys that can help them make explosive plays in either the running game, but more preferably the passing game.
Yeah, when I look at this, and I hate when we just agree hook and step, but I think when you
Hard
look at
not
these
to.
numbers,
They're
I mean,
awful. They're
I
really
mean,
bad.
when you look at these numbers, I mean, when you're 30th in the National Football League in yards per attempt, and when you look at the playoff teams, I mean, the Titans were 8th in yards per attempt, the Chiefs 5th, the Bills 8th, Bengals 1st, the Raiders 5th, the Patriots 4th, the Packers 4th, the Bucks 6th, the Cowboys they tied for 4th, the Rams were 2nd. I mean, you look at the Super Bowl playoff, look at the Super Bowl participants. I mean, the Bengals and the Rams are 1st and 3rd. I mean, and the one thing, and the Cards were 4th, 49ers 2nd, even the Eagles were 6th. And the one thing you see every year when I do these stats is the same thing plays out every year. Yards per attempt, teams that are high in yards per attempt and big passing plays are teams that make the playoffs and go deep in the playoffs, because what that does is that coincides with points per game. And it's a direct correlation, because if you look at the points per game, I mean, the Titans average 24, Chiefs 29, Bills 29, Bengals 27. The Raiders averaged 21.8, but they weren't a really good team. The Patriots averaged 27. I mean, the Packers 25, the Bucks almost 30, Cowboys 30, Rams 27, Cards 25. If you're not getting explosive plays in the passing game, you're not going to score a bunch of points. And I didn't even look at differential, because I would bet that each of these playoff teams, when you're looking at point differential, it's probably plus, I'm going to guess 5.5 or greater. Bengals might be a little bit lower because they're the rare Super Bowl team that has 7 losses in the Super Bowl. So typically, you never have a team with 7 losses in the Super Bowl. I mean, that's just really rare, particularly because it was a 16-game schedule, and it's hard to make the playoffs at 9-7. So the Bengals are kind of rare in that regard. But typically the point differential is at least a touchdown or more. And that's that golden area. If you're 7 to 10 in point differential, you're probably going to win a Super Bowl. And that's largely because you're getting explosive plays in the passing game. And that's more important. Typically, I think a lot of fans will look at third down percentage and red zone percentage. But if you're getting big plays in the passing game, you're not in the red zone and you don't have a lot of third downs that you have to convert. Third down percentage conversion is very important for teams that have to possess the ball and have to have long drives. But if you're an explosive team, hell, you're not going to get 14 third down attempts in a game. You'll get like 10 and you'll convert 6. Why did you only get 10? Because you threw it over somebody's head multiple times and you didn't even get into third down.
You got
You
points.
know, you
It's
got
that
points.
simple.
And so
You got
and I
points.
would love for the NFL to come up with a nice stat in terms of like what's the percentage of times that you don't like get into a third down, like where they start measuring like the percentage of times you get into a third down situation. And I'll guarantee you teams that don't get into a lot of third downs are probably these teams that have gone to the playoffs. When they get in third down, they're good, obviously, because they want to possess the ball, but they want to throw it over your head. They want to throw it over your head and let Tyreek Hill run for like 70 with open space, and they have a 6 play drive and they score a touchdown. So, the Steelers clearly, and they have to improve in the passing game. Is there one number? Because I'm looking in the live chat and Grayson said, wow, 6 yards per attempt. Is there one number of those numbers that I read or anything that you looked up on the offensive side of football that just strikes you as really surprising? For me, it's the yards per play. I mean, the yards per play is just absolutely unreal. 4.8 yards per play. I mean, that's laughable. Like that's laughable in the National Football League. That stood out to me as wow. I mean, this is a bad unit.
Honestly, if we're going to use the word surprise here literally, the biggest surprise to me is 9 wins. They have easily one of the worst offenses in the NFL, and this is an offense-driven league. It's not everything. I will point this out. You know who led the league in explosive plays this year? The Cleveland Browns. You saw what happened with them. Very much a boom or bust team that fell apart at midseason and never got back on track. But the Steelers didn't make plays all year long. The fact they were able to win 9 games is a complete shock. That is what should not have happened, all things considered. But nothing else, nothing the Steelers finished with at the end of the year surprises me at all. And Lance, you know this. I've been yelling about this since day one of last offseason. This offense is not going to be good. They just aren't. There's nothing they're going to be able to bring in the situation that they're in that's going to improve them dramatically offensively. And that's what they need right now if they're going to do it again. And I'm not sure where we sit right now, it's going to be all that much different. I think there are reasons to think maybe they'll improve a bit, but are we going to be celebrating and toasting their success if all of a sudden they go from 6 yards a pass to 6.4? Because that's the level of improvement I feel that they're capable of doing. But I'm not sure if that's not just deck chairs on the Titanic at this point. You know, they're not going to have the personnel that they'll need to really make explosive plays down the field.
Yeah, let's think about it this way. And with that Brown stat, I know you don't have the number in front of you. I'm
Yeah,
interested to hear how many of those explosive plays were rushing plays. I'm going to guess with the
overall,
Browns,
all right,
half
that
of them.
number. Hold on.
Yeah, I'm going to
It
guess with
very
the
well could
Browns,
be.
half of them.
Very
Yeah,
well
with the
could be.
Browns,
But
it was probably half.
the
Because
point,
to your point, Neil, about creating explosive plays in the passing game of 20 yards or more, the Steelers have 41 of those plays. The Buccaneers had 76. And one interesting thing, in terms of Aaron Rodgers, of course, won the 2-time MVP. When you look at some of the offensive numbers and you compare the Bucs offense against the Packers, wow, Brady had a phenomenal year because in a lot of numbers, the Bucks offense was absolutely better than the Packers offense, which I found interesting because of the overwhelming support that it was a foregone conclusion that Aaron Rodgers was going to win the MVP. But that's an aside. So let's look at it this way, Neil. So you have an
Just jump
offense in
in
the
really
passing
quick.
game.
You
Okay.
are dead on correct about Cleveland. I didn't even notice this at first. Shame on me. But
Yes.
Cleveland, 81 explosive plays in the rushing game. Indianapolis, 72.
Yes. Yeah, that
Passing
makes
though,
sense.
Cleveland, 47. What did I say Pittsburgh had? 45? 42
40.
for Pittsburgh,
Okay.
47
Okay.
for Cleveland. And Indianapolis, just to round it out, had 42 as well. So you see the value of being able to throw the ball versus, comparatively speaking,
Yes.
your overall offense. But at the very least, those two teams were reasonably competitive at different times because they had explosive plays. Pittsburgh didn't have any of them at all, really.
Of course, it's not A plus B equals C. I mean, this isn't perfect math. This is football. I mean, so of course, there's other things when we're talking about explosive plays that will factor in to next year for the Steelers being more successful. But when you look at a gap between 41 and 76, I mean, you're looking at a gap of 35, almost double the explosive plays in the passing game. I mean, I mean, for the Steelers to improve their chances to win, and you got to juxtapose it against they're going up against a team that is playing in the Super Bowl tomorrow, who got if I could find their number here. I mean, you're talking about they're going up against a Cincinnati Bengal team that was number one in yards per attempt at 8.5 and who generated 63 explosive plays in the passing game, an additional 22. So, the Steelers need to get, and let's just say this the explosive passing plays doesn't change, the numbers don't change, just to get in that top, you know, 10 range, they're going to have to generate probably an additional 25 explosive plays in the passing game. And so, part of getting to that passing protection will have to improve. But hopefully they'll have a quarterback this year. I don't know who the starter is going to be that can actually attack downfield, but we can see they need some guys. They need some guys. And I love the way you say it. It's not just scheme, but they need some guys. I mean, you're talking about yards per attempt, 6 yards? Bengals 8.5? I mean, the Rams 8.2? I mean, they're not even in the stratosphere. So when we talk about numbers that must improve in 2022, clearly it's yards per attempt and it's creating explosive plays in the passing game. And it's going to be interesting to see how they solve that. And I think when you look at those numbers, it's going to be clear that getting a player that can stretch the field to add to this group is going to factor into it. Like, because they see the numbers like we see the numbers. And you can't drive the ball 14, 15 plays consistently to score points. I mean, you really have to create, play explosive plays in the passing game. Let me just ask it to you from this perspective, Neil. When a staff sees this number, when Matt Canada and Mike Tomlin see this number, what do you think goes through their head? What do they say? How do they get at this? Because I think they know more about football than we do, and they know that this is a problem, and they know that this is something that they have to improve. How do they go about trying to improve it or to address it in terms of their offense for next year?
I'm going to say this. I'm going to combine it with a comment that was made earlier. First off, the greatest narrative that is supported by nothing tangible outside of a one team perspective is the idea that throwing the ball short of the first down marker is somehow avoided by every team in the league. The best offenses don't ever do that. This is a catch and run league. High percentage throws to playmakers in space. That's what they're looking to do. This is why the average height of an NFL wide receiver, certainly at the all-pro level, has gone down like 4 inches. They are getting the
Okay.
ball to very short, fast, short space, open field runners. Antonio Brown is an excellent example of this. He was lethal after the catch. The Steelers' passing game, as much as everyone wants to praise Ben Roethlisberger and talk about his arm and everything like that, their numbers were bolstered by the fact that Brown could catch a ball and take it 7 yards from anywhere on the field, at least. And he would break some 40 or 50 yards pretty consistently. Probably the best open field runner of his era. The NFL is trying to find guys like that because the answer to not running the ball is throwing it complete 80% of the time to guys that can run. You are eliminating the defensive line if you do that. You want to play against the secondary when it comes to tackling. So you throw the ball in a screen situation, which everyone destroyed Todd Haley for calling all the time. And it wasn't simply just a matter of Ben looking over and seeing that there's 2 defensive backs versus 3 receivers in space to block for Antonio Brown. It's simply a question of how can you get the ball to a talented runner in space. That's what they're doing. At the same time, too, if you don't have the guy open 11 yards down the field, 1 yard past the first down sticks, complete it to a guy underneath who has a chance to run for it. They're trying to complete the pass, okay? That's why look it up. I don't know if you have this in front of you, Lance. Ben Roethlisberger's completion percentage on third down is probably pretty close to his normal completion percentage. He completed passes.
Yeah.
They just didn't make it to the sticks. Everyone blames the depth of the route. It's not. It's a design play. They want to do that. Obviously, it doesn't work. It's a question, though, of the skill of your receivers and to some degree what you're doing to get them open underneath. Everyone talks about we hear it all the time, the genius of Sean McVay, the genius of Kyle Shanahan. Really, what those guys are doing is finding ways to pass the ball short and get guys in space and let them do their thing. Deebo Samuel is one of the best offensive players in the game. He doesn't run 14-yard routes. He just averages 14 yards a catch because they put him in space, and he's a great open field runner. He's also a really strong guy who's hard to take down on one tackle alone. You get a guy like that up against defensive backs, he's going to win. So really, to me, this is a question, yes, to some degree, your scheme, but the scheme the Steelers had is largely because they didn't have any other options. They couldn't get the ball deep down the field because they don't have an offensive line that can protect. They don't have a quarterback that can throw, and they don't have receivers that can win at that level of the field. What they needed to do was complete the pass and try to move upfield, try to outrun people to the edge, pick up yards after the catch. That's what they've tried to do the last 2 seasons. It hasn't worked. They need to find guys that can do that and then scheme them up in a way that they're going to be more successful. They want to complete passes. Okay. At the end of the day, it's a completions league. The more yards they can get easily, in other words, the closest resemblance to a run game is a high percentage passing game. That's what the Steelers have tried to do. So you put all that together, it's really that their athletes aren't especially explosive. They're not great in space, and they're not putting them into great positions. And some of that is, again, due to the fact they don't have difference-making personnel. They don't have explosive speed anywhere on the field. They don't have great athleticism anywhere on the field, with the exception of maybe Claypool, if he can figure it out. But after 2 seasons now, I'm not confident that'll happen. We'll see how they address this, but I guarantee you they're going to find a playmaker in free agency or the draft. They're going to bring him in, and they're going to find ways to get the ball to that player in space and let them create more than what they've been able to.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what they do moving forward. And one thing I'll do before we conclude this show is I will put the link to this spreadsheet that we've compiled. I'm sorry, Grayson, it was a lot of numbers, but that's the benefit of being able to do a podcast. I mean, I kind of knew where we were going to get to, but I didn't want to lead the witness and Neil Coulon to the conclusion that I thought he was going to get to when we look at it, because, I mean, it's pretty clear as day. I mean, the Steelers lacked explosive plays in their offense. And when you lack explosive plays, it becomes the onus on execution increases that much more. And when you have a young
Exactly.
offensive line, it just makes it more difficult to execute successfully. I mean, Tom Brady and the Patriots made a living scoring a zillion points with a well coordinated and well structured short passing game.
They had all of
With
it, though.
They
To
had
some
all of
degree,
it
they had
though.
all of
Yeah,
it.
like they had all of it. They could
Yeah.
morph into anything. So,
Mhm.
with that being said, before we get out of here, Neil, give me your Super Bowl prediction.
Um, People are going to hate this. I've gone over it a bunch of
Oh,
different ways. I've talked to a lot of people.
Zach
Cincinnati's going to win this game.
Taylor, Zach
Um,
Taylor,
Zach Taylor.
Zach Taylor's number
It's
one. Da, 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 da.
side story
Zach
to Zach
Taylor,
Taylor and other
Zach
predictions of
Taylor.
teams that I've put in writing before.
Oh, so let
Um,
me hear this. Let me hear this. So,
well, I'll boil it down very quickly. A friend of my brother's, I was working at the paper in Iowa at this point. He was passing through town. I met up with him for dinner, and they were baseball guys. We were talking baseball, and I forget what the conversation was exactly, but the point that I was making was emphatic. Whatever this was has as much a chance as the Florida Marlins do of winning the World Series, and the Florida Marlins won the World Series. 90% of the conversation I've had with that guy since then, and that was 17 years ago, has been about the fact he asked me who I'm picking for the World Series. Who do I need to put my money on? Who's the worst team in your mind in the league? So to suggest now that Zach Taylor, who's on the verge of winning a Super Bowl, is being picked by me as the soon-to-be Super Bowl winning head coach is a bit crazy. I understand. More of this comes down to the fact that the weekend before several Super Bowls over the last 10 years, if I've been on the radio, if I've been writing it, we have always disregarded the team that's playing better defense or elite defense
yes,
versus the
yes,
team that we perceive to be great offensively.
yes,
Right
yes.
now, it is abundantly clear which side that favors. And I'm not betting against it. I'm not going to say the name of it, but there was a national radio host who ridiculed me for picking the Broncos over Cam Newton's Panthers, because Panthers were unstoppable. They were the 15-1 team with the MVP. They had the unstoppable offense. Denver's just playing too good defensively.
Oh,
Watch. You're going to
that
see
guy
it.
was crazy. Denver beat the
Yeah.
Patriots. They were
And
going to win.
Denver completely shut Carolina down. I picked Seattle over Peyton's Broncos, that was statistically the best offense in the history of the NFL. Seattle beat the ever-loving piss out of that team. That was never competitive, not even remotely competitive. Seattle's still scoring on them right now, and Denver can't move the ball. Defense. I hate defense wins championships more than I hate offense wins championships. It's not any one thing at any time. It's a matchups game. It comes down between two teams. I picked the Rams to win the Super Bowl this year, and I'm picking Cincinnati to win this game. The main reason is Matt Stafford did not do what I thought that he would. He had the opportunity many times. He's left a lot on the field. They have not been the offense you think that they would be. They're not a balanced offense, and I think Cincinnati sees that. Cincinnati did in the second half exactly what the Rams are built to do against a team. And I think Cincinnati is going to shut them down because of that. They can drop guys into coverage and still get pressure on the quarterback. I don't think Stafford is otherworldly. I don't think the Rams should be in the game. I think Tampa Bay comes back and wins that game if they cover Cooper Kupp deep, which they should have in the situation that they had against in the divisional. I don't think the Rams are all that good of a team. I don't think the Bengals are all that good of a team. I don't even think I would pick the Bengals to win the AFC North next year, just flat out. I think they're going to have to compete for that. They're not top to bottom a great football team, but they have the right personnel and the right matchups against Los Angeles to play a low-scoring game and come out on top. 19-16 Bengals.
Well, I'm going to pick the Rams because but I wouldn't be surprised if the Bengals won. I think if I went to sleep and woke up, I think the key for the Bengals to win is Joe Mixon and their ability to run the football,
Agreed.
and control the Rams defensive line. So if you go to sleep and wake up and Joe Mixon has 20 plus carries, Cincinnati won the
I
game.
I think they use him in the passing game. I think they're going to use him short. They're going to get the ball out of Burrow's hand. They're going to nullify the pass rush that you get from the Rams. Move him out laterally. I think Mixon did a great job of that against Kansas City in the second half. They got him going. He was the reason. Not to go on a huge rant about this, but the gross overpraise that Joe Burrow is getting for his performances in the last 2 weeks, it's pretty ridiculous. Pretty ridiculous to me for, in my opinion, a team that defensively, 6 of the 8 quarters, they completely dominated their opponent. All of the Tennessee game
Let me
and the
say this,
second half of the
listeners.
Kansas City game. We've
Let me say
forgotten this completely because of the god that is Joe Burrow. It's ridiculous.
Let me say this, listeners. For Neil to say this about Joe Burrow is significant. Like, mark the tape, 1 hour and 5 minutes, because Neil has probably been on the Joe Burrow bandwagon like 2 years ago. Like, not
Lance
even
and I
this
got
year.
hot when it came down to AFC North quarterbacks. He was sold on Lamar Jackson. I told him, just watch. You're going to see Joe Burrow blow up this year. And Joe Burrow didn't even do everything I thought he would do this year. And he's not playing exceptionally well in the playoffs. He's a good quarterback. Right now, Stafford is a better quarterback. Burrow does the things he needs to do, but Cincinnati just has a better matchup against this team in one game with 2 weeks to prepare. Their defense is playing too well. Burrow will do enough, but they're not going to score a ton, and the Bengals can keep that scoring down.
I think the game will be low scoring. I would take the under. I'm going to take the Rams. I like McVay in the coaching matchup. I think McVay will learn from, his previous debacle in the Super Bowl. I like the Rams defensive side of football, at least that front against the Bengals offensive line. I think that's going to be interesting. It's hard for me to pick the Bengals. I give the Bengals a lot of credit because they came back in Kansas City and played a well of a second half to win that game. I was just really concerned about what I saw in the first half as well. Like, wow, they were just giving it up on offense. I think it's going to be a competitive game, but I'm gonna go Rams. There was one thing in the show that I wanted to talk about that I missed and that I did not talk about, but we'll talk about that on next week's show. Want to thank everybody for chiming in. Show went a little bit long, but it's Super Bowl weekend. Hope you guys enjoy the Super Bowl. Have fun. The halftime show is going to be, oh my goodness, that's going to be epic. That's what I'm looking forward to. I have not watched or listened to any Super Bowl breakdown because I am not excited by a Rams Bengals matchup. Not at all. I don't want to watch light blue, gold, orange, and black all on the same football field at the same time. That's horrible.
Impressive.
And I was just geeked about seeing a Chiefs Rams matchup where we might see 75-73 as the final score. I was just all for that business. So I'm not excited about this Super Bowl, but I am going to pick the Rams. And Double H said Lance jinxed the Rams. And actually, I am going to pick my mom as the winner because she will be happy that this game is over so her community can go back to being normal. She is absolutely tired of football for the last 35 weeks. She's like, man, it's been football for almost 6-7 months straight. But let me get out of here. Thank you guys for chiming into the show. Thank you, Neil, as always. And as always, tune in, tell a friend, and subscribe. 1, 2, 3, fake smile.